A man is alone on a Russian mountain. It's the early 2000s. He has been hiking for hours through dense Caucasus forest, the kind of thick, lightless forest where the trees grow so close together the sky disappears. His name is Arthur Zhemukhov. He's a speleologist, a cave scientist, and he's not out here looking for caves. He's looking for something the locals refuse to talk about. The mountain is called Khara-Hora. In the Kabardian language, that translates to something like Mountain of the Dog and Boar. Locals in the villages at the base of these peaks whisper about this place the way people whisper about a house where something terrible happened. They tell stories of subterranean cities. They tell stories of things that live in the dark beneath the rock. They tell their children to stay away. High on the slope, he pushes through the tree line and finds himself on a rocky face of the mountain. He is scanning the ground, which is how he nearly walks straight over the edge. He stops. He looks down. There is a vertical shaft plunging straight into the earth at his feet. Not a natural crack, not a sinkhole. His flashlight sweeps the opening, and what he sees stops him cold. The walls are stone, massive stone, cut, polished, fitted together with geometric precision that should not exist on a remote Russian mountainside. The blocks run perfectly parallel on both sides, descending into blackness far below. Arthur Zhemukhov stares down into it for a long moment. Then he ties off his ropes and goes in. What he finds at the bottom of that shaft will spend the next 2 decades pulling researchers, journalists, and investigators to Khara-Hora Mountain. Some of them will come back changed, some of them won't come back at all, and before any of them arrived, someone else had already been here, someone who left a mark. The entrance to the Khara-Hora Shaft is a rectangle, which is the first wrong thing about it. Natural fissures in rock don't form rectangles. They crack along fault lines. They follow the path of least resistance. They produce irregular splits and jagged openings. This opening is different. The edges are completely straight. The corners are sharp, and it measures 134 centimeters wide and 43 centimeters deep. Whoever designed this passage designed it at the absolute limit of what a human body can fit through. Arthur Zhemukhov secures his ropes to the stone above and begins to descend. The passage is almost immediately claustrophobic in the way that claustrophobic does not fully capture. He can't turn around, he can't sit up. He has to flatten himself against the cold, polished stone and slide on his stomach into the dark below him. The walls press against his chest and his back simultaneously. He slides for 40 meters, roughly the height of a 13-story building. He's sliding down the throat of a mountain in a stone tube barely wider than his shoulders, alone, in absolute silence except for the sound of his own breathing. The flashlight strapped to his helmet casts a thin cone of light against the walls. At some point, he notices something strange. A steady, cold draft is rising from somewhere far below him. Not a draft from outside, pulled down by his descent. A draft rising up, as if something at the bottom of this mountain is breathing. Despite the danger, he doesn't stop. He keeps going, and then the walls end. The passage opens up without warning into the underground chamber, a void so large that his flashlight beam cannot find the top. He explores as far as he can. The structure continues, an L-shaped descent, more than 100 meters of accessible passage before the tunnels narrow again into gaps too tight for any human body. Somewhere below those gaps, the breathing continues. The cold air rises, steady and consistent, from depths he cannot reach. He eventually comes back out into daylight. He has been inside the mountain for hours. He sits at the top of the shaft for a long time. News of the anomaly reaches Vadim Chernobrov. Blim Chernobrov has spent decades leading the Cosmopaeus Group, a team of researchers and engineers dedicated to investigating geophysical and unexplained phenomena across the former Soviet Union. They are not ghost hunters. They are methodical. They bring equipment. They take measurements. They produce documentation. When Chernobrov hears Arthur Zhemukhov's description of the shaft, he comes with cameras, lights, climbing gear, and a team capable of creating a three-dimensional survey of the space. What they map looks, on a computer screen, exactly like a large industrial ventilation system. Not like a cave, not like a natural geological formation. A shaft. A controlled passage, an L-shaped descent into the earth, with precise dimensional consistency from top to bottom, terminating in a large chamber from which further passages extend too deep to follow. Vadim's team documents something else that Arthur Zhemukhov noticed, but hadn't fully processed. The walls of the underground chamber are covered in small, perfectly formed cavities. Narrow holes drilled or bored into the megalithic stone, extending so deep into the rock that the strongest flashlights they bring cannot find their ends. Not decorative, not natural, purpose-built for something by something capable of boring precise holes into stone with a consistency and depth that implied either a very long time or very serious machinery. There are no hieroglyphs or any other markings anywhere in the structure. No carvings, no paintings, no markings of any kind that could be interpreted as language or ritual. No burn marks on the walls. In ancient underground structures used by humans, tombs, temples, hiding places, you always find burn marks. Humans need light, and they always bring torches or lamps. The residue stays on the stone for thousands of years. It's one of the most reliable signs that people lived and worked in a space. There are no burn marks anywhere in the Khara-Hora Shaft. Vadim Chernobrov reaches a conclusion he does not reach lightly. This space was not designed for human habitation or worship. It was not a tomb, not a temple, not a mine. It was built for a function that required no light, no ceremony, no art, and no human presence. He calls it a machine. The steady flow of air from the depths continues throughout the entire expedition. The mountain breathes. Whatever is below the inaccessible passages is connected to something that generates airflow, either an active system of some kind, or a network of tunnels so extensive that the natural thermal gradient creates the effect of ventilation. The expedition ends and the team publishes their findings. The scientific community responds with precisely the amount of interest you would expect. Almost none. What no one notices, at least not at first, is that Arthur Zhemukhov did not find this shaft purely on his own instincts. He had been following a trail, a very old trail, one left by people who came to this mountain long before he did, and what they left behind changes everything about what this shaft might mean. There's a boulder near the entrance to the Khara-Hora Shaft. On that boulder, carved deeply into the gray stone, is a swastika. Not ancient, the cut is clean, the style is unmistakable. It is a German swastika from the Second World War, left behind by Wehrmacht Ahnenerbe researchers who came to this mountain in 1942. In the summer of 1942, Wehrmacht forces pushed south into the Caucasus under an operation called Edelweiss. The military objective was the oil fields of Baku, but moving alongside the soldiers were men who had different orders. They were researchers attached to Heinrich Himmler's Ahnenerbe, the SS organization dedicated to what they called ancestral heritage research. What that meant in practice was this. They were hunting for proof that an ancient advanced Aryan civilization had once existed and that its descendants were the German people. They believed that civilization had not simply disappeared. They believed it had gone underground. The Ahnenerbe sent expeditions to Tibet, to South America, to the far corners of the Arctic. They were looking for what they called Shambhala, the mythological hidden kingdom beneath the earth where a godlike race continued to exist in secret, waiting. The Caucasus Mountains in their research were a primary candidate, and they found Khara-Hora. The carved swastika on the carved boulder is their marker. But that's not the most unsettling thing about the carved boulder. A few steps from the Nazi carving, there is a second swastika. This one isn't from 1942. The erosion pattern, the depth of the weathering, the integration of the carving into the surrounding stone. Researchers who have examined it place it at thousands of years old. Long before the Nazis, long before Germany, long before the Roman Empire, someone else was marking this location long before the Wehrmacht Ahnenerbe researchers arrived. The earliest swastika-like shape ever found was uncovered in Mizin, Ukraine, carved on an ivory figurine which dates back an incredible 12,000 years. 12,000 years. That predates Egypt. It predates Mesopotamia. It predates the wheel. From there, it appears everywhere. The symbol is found in the archaeological remains of the Indus Valley Civilization and the Neolithic-era Samara culture of Mesopotamia, as well as in early Byzantine and Christian artwork. It also appears in the Bronze and Iron Age cultures around the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. It shows up on pottery in Africa, in Native American ceremonial art, in Buddhist temples in Japan, in the catacombs of Rome, carved next to the Latin words Zotico Zotico, life of life. Swastikas have also been found in Iron Age designs of the Northern Caucasus, specifically in the Koban culture. The Nazis did not bring the swastika to this mountain. The swastika was already there. It had been there apparently for a very long time. The Nazi researchers recognized the symbol, and they left their own beside it, the way you might sign your name in a visitor's book. So the question is not why the Nazis marked this spot. The question is who marked it first, and why. Here is a story most people in the Western world have forgotten or never knew. Several thousand years ago, somewhere in the region the ancient world called the Northern Seas, possibly Greece, possibly Scandinavia, possibly somewhere that no longer exists above the waterline, there was a civilization. They were skilled in things that should not have been possible at the time. Architecture, astronomy, healing, metallurgy. They built things that did not decay easily. They knew how the stars moved. They understood engineering at a scale their contemporaries could not match. They were called, in the oldest Irish texts, the Tuatha Danann. It translates roughly as the people of the goddess Danu, or the tribe of the gods. In Celtic mythology, the Tuatha Danann were a race inhabiting Ireland before the arrival of the Milesians, the ancestors of the modern Irish. They were said to have been skilled in magic, and the earliest reference to them relates that after they were banished from heaven because of their knowledge, they descended on Ireland in a cloud of mist. They came out of nowhere. They arrived with technology no one around them possessed. They built things. They fought battles. They introduced skills and systems to the people they encountered. And then they were defeated by the early humans of Ireland. A god named Amergin was called upon to divide the land between the Tuatha Danann and his own people. He cleverly allotted the portion above ground to the Milesians and the portion underground to the Tuatha Danann. The Tuatha Danann were led underground into the city mounds by Menon and MacLear. They went underground. Not as a metaphor, not as a spiritual concept. The oldest texts in Irish mythology describe in specific detail an advanced race of people descending into constructed underground spaces where they continued to live, hidden from the surface world. The Tuatha Danann didn't want to leave or be subservient, so they went underground into cities they had created beforehand. Cities, built beforehand, prepared in advance of their descent. They were a very evolved civilization and excelled in the arts and sciences, especially astronomy, architecture, and music. They were descendants of Nemid, leader of a previous wave of Irish inhabitants whose genealogy extends back to the biblical Noah. Nemid was the son of Agnaman of Scythia. Scythia is the ancient name for the region stretching from the Black Sea across the Caucasus steppe, precisely the mountain range where the Khara-Hora Shaft was found. Their own mythological genealogy traces back to the same geographic region as the shaft. Certainly possible that these were migrating people from advanced civilizations in our world, perhaps displaced by some great catastrophe, searching out new homes, bringing with them what remained of their knowledge and technology. A catastrophe, something that drove a civilization underground, something that happened so completely that what remained above was interpreted as mythology by every culture that came after, and they left structures behind, structures like Khara-Hora Mountain. Before we go any further, we should give geology its fair hearing. Geologist Vera Davydenko has looked at the Khara-Hora Shaft and offers an explanation that is far less dramatic. Khara-Hora Mountain is composed largely of volcanic tuff, compacted ancient ash and lava. When volcanic tuff cools rapidly, it fractures. And it does not fracture randomly. It fractures along natural stress lines that produce rectangular blocks with relatively straight edges. Over centuries, gravitational pressure slides these fractured blocks against each other, polishing their surfaces smooth. The L-shaped shaft, the straight walls, the block-like appearance, all of it, Davydenko argues, is the result of geological processes that need no ancient engineers. It is a coherent argument. Volcanic rock does form geometric patterns. Columnar basalt, for example, produces near-perfect hexagonal columns without any intelligent involvement whatsoever. Nature is capable of surprising precision, but here is where the geological explanation runs short. The mortar-like substance between the blocks. Natural rock fracture does not produce bonding material at the seams. Something applied that substance. The deep, perfectly cylindrical cavities bored into the walls. Volcanic fracture produces cracks and irregular voids. It does not produce uniform, deeply penetrating cylindrical holes spaced across a surface. The consistent airflow rising from the deepest inaccessible sections. Natural caves often have airflow, but the steadiness and upward direction of this draft suggests a connected system of tunnels extensive enough to create a thermal chimney effect. The question is what those tunnels connect to. And then there are the surface stones documented by photographer Alexander Sploshnov in the Baksan Gorge nearby. Massive rectangular blocks, half buried in the earth, scattered across the mountainside, on several of them parallel striations, straight, evenly spaced grooves cut deeply into the surface that bear no resemblance to natural weathering. They look like the marks left by industrial cutting equipment. What kind of cutting equipment existed in the Caucasus Mountains at whatever age these stones were placed there? The geological explanation is not impossible, but it leaves a residue, a collection of specific details that cooling lava simply does not account for. Vadim Chernobrov's team spent considerable time trying to date the structure, the materials, the construction method, the weathering patterns. All of them pointed toward extreme antiquity, not ancient civilization ancient, something older, something that predated the conventional timelines for organized human construction in the region by a significant margin. If you accept the geological explanation, you have a remarkable but ultimately natural formation. If you don't accept it completely, if you look at the mortar, the cylindrical holes, the machine marks on the surface stones, and find that the explanation falls short, then you are left with a question that has no comfortable answer. Who built this, and when? 3 years after making a new discovery near the site, Arthur Zhemukhov called his colleagues to tell them about it. He described it as significant. He said he would share the details soon. The next day, he was struck and killed by a car. That was 2015. 2 years later, Vadim, the man who had mapped the Khara-Hora Shaft and published the most detailed documentation of its structure, was diagnosed with an aggressive cancer. He died rapidly. That was 2017. 3 other researchers with documented connections to the study of anomalous underground structures in the Caucasus region also died within a few years of each other. Unusual circumstances, untimely deaths, the kind of statistical cluster that, in isolation, might be explained as coincidence. 5 people, all connected to Khara-Hora Mountain, or to the broader investigation of underground anomalies in the Caucasus region, all dead. Locals in the Caucasian villages at the base of the mountain did not find this surprising. They had always said Khara-Hora Mountain exacts a price from those who disturb it. They had said this for generations, long before any speleologist with ropes and flashlights arrived to peer over the edge of that rectangular shaft. After the deaths, formal organized research into the site largely stopped. No major scientific institution has mounted an expedition. The Khara-Hora Shaft sits as it has sat for as long as anyone knows. Dark, rectangular, breathing. The people who knew it best are gone, and it seems like it might be intentional.